I've been really looking forward to Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden, and it arrived a couple weeks ago and I've been spending a lot of time with it. In this video, I'm going to be giving you my full review and telling you whether or not I think it's worth it if you're planning to run it, or just as a source of inspiration and ideas. Hi everybody, my name is Nate, and you are watching WASD20, a channel about tabletop RPGs and fantasy maps. Well, it happened everybody, it finally happened. I found a D&D 5th edition book that I actually want to run. Now, I've reviewed a lot of these books over the years, and I've never been really big on the idea of running pre-written adventures, especially some of the longer ones that, for me and my pace, would take years to get through with my group. So what is different this time? Well, I think part of it is probably just the timing. I've been thinking about running a D&D 5e official adventure for a long time, and I feel like it's finally time. A second reason is I just have a lot of nostalgia for the setting of Icewind Dale. And thirdly, I honestly did really like it. Can I say it's the best D&D 5e adventure? I don't know if I can say that very confidently at all, but there are a lot of things I really like about this book, mainly the really harsh environment with just a lot of really cool, creepy, weird stuff going on. Still, the book is definitely not without its faults, and I'm going to point some of those out in the review here. In fact, because I pretty much had decided that I was going to be running this adventure within the first couple pages, I think I read the rest of the book with a much more critical eye and was able to identify more problems along the way. And by the way, if you do want to watch me run Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden, I have gathered a group of 4 excellent players, very good friends of mine, and we are going to be starting a campaign, and yes, it will be live streamed starting October 5th. That's a Monday night, it'll be at 8 p.m. EDT, and I'm actually probably going to be running it on a new channel called WASD20 Live, which I'll put a link to right up there. So you can go ahead and subscribe to that channel. I'll also put a link down in the video description, and you can mark your calendar for October 5th at 8 p.m. EDT. Definitely consider joining us live for session 1. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Lastly, before we crack open the book and get to the contents, I do want to mention that there is an affiliate link to the book down in the video description. Buying through those Amazon links is a great way to support the channel at no extra cost to you. And I'll also throw a link down there to Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which is the new source book that's coming in November. I'm also really excited for that one. All right, let's get down to it.
Players, especially my players, massive spoilers ahead. Please, turn back now. You have been warned.
All right, so here we have the book. I've got both the standard cover as well as the alternate cover here. Both of them are nice, nothing super spectacular, but very serviceable. And as we open it up here, we'll look at the table of contents for a moment. You can see that there are 7 chapters and an epilogue. And there are also these regular appendices that you would expect in the D&D books, including a whole lot of monsters in this one, although a lot of those are just kind of Arctic cold weather creatures. In case you don't know, Icewind Dale is located north of the Spine of the World mountain range in the Forgotten Realms continent of Faerun. It does come with a huge fold-out poster map of the world, but because I can't fit it on camera very well, we'll just take a look at this smaller version I got that came with the Rime of the Frostmaiden dice set. So this one here gives us a picture of what we're looking at. So all of those cities like Waterdeep and Baldur's Gate that we've come to know and love are far south of the Spine of the World here. And this is the Sea of Moving Ice, the Reghead Glacier, and this right here is the area called 10 Towns. On the back of this, as well as the poster map, you have some individual maps of the 10 towns. The setting was actually first introduced in this book right here by R.A. Salvatore, also the first introduction to the character of Drizzt. So Icewind Dale is cold, really cold, and it is especially cold because there is a sort of curse over it from Auril, the Frostmaiden. So there's actually 3 main conflicts going on here, and in this adventure summary we can read about them. The first one is the Duergar Despot. There is a Duergar, who are deep dwarves, generally a little more evil, named Zardarok, who is coming to the surface to start an empire on the surface, the first ever Duergar empire on the surface, and they are trying to gather this magical stone called Shardolin, and they are doing so because he is believed he is being guided by his patron, Deep Dwera, but he actually doesn't know that his patron is Asmodeus in disguise. So, yeah, they are trying to kind of forge an empire here on the surface, and 10 Towns stands in the way of that. There's also this bit about a Netherese necropolis, and so this is a little bit more under the surface, literally as well as figuratively, because there are these wizards who are looking for this city buried beneath the ice, this ancient, magical, very powerful city, part of the Netheril Empire. And then you've got Auril's everlasting rime, which gets at the fact that there is kind of this everlasting winter that is brutally cold, and it is the Frostmaiden, a lesser god, Auril, who is behind it. And so, yeah, we do get some stuff on the weather conditions specifically here. Wilderness survival, avalanches, blizzards, extreme cold, fishing for knucklehead trout, frigid water, illumination, and yes, it does say here that twilight extends from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and otherwise it is dark. And so that 4 hours of twilight just comes from the aurora that goes across the sky. It is not actually from any sunlight. So yeah, it is an extremely brutal climate, and these rules do support that to some extent. I would say they're not like totally game-changing, but they do give you some rules. They could have certainly given us more here to really change the game, but it's kind of more of a coat of paint that we put over it all. And there are often going to be some of these hazards: avalanches, blizzards, extreme cold, frigid water, etc. We do get this nice adventure flow chart here, which is really handy. We get a pronunciation chart, character hooks tied to backgrounds. This is really useful. I really like that they put this in here, and I'm definitely going to be encouraging my players to use that. And this bit on character secrets is really cool and just kind of builds this feeling of suspicion and isolation that they're going for. There's definitely a bit of a horror tone in this book, but it's not as strong as I thought it would be. Still, I love the idea that player characters have secrets, and there are actually some cards in the back that you can photocopy for your players and just have them pick one of these at random or choose one that they like best. And yeah, I really like that. Some of them are definitely really tied into the story. Others of them just give you a little bonus. I think I'm going to be encouraging my players to take some that are more tied in with the story that will lead to some really cool things later in the book. So that is the intro to the book. Now let's talk about Chapter 1, 10 Towns. This chapter is one big old sandbox. You do get all 10 towns and some good descriptions of them here. Some of them are very small. I think the smaller populations are like 50 to 100, and some of the bigger ones are upwards of 1,000, I believe. And one thing that I noticed is they don't really have very much bigger chapters for the biggest cities. For example, the largest city is Bryn Shander. Let's find that right here, with a population of about 1,200. And there you have a map of it. And you only get, in this city of 1,200, 1, 2, 3 locations. And so that's something that I thought was a little bit off. I would have appreciated getting more locations for the bigger towns. And really, if a town only has 100 people, I could see just having one location. But no, here we have Caer Dineval with a population of 100, and we still get 1, 2, 3 locations, although they are a bit more simple and brief in description. Additionally, each town comes with a quest. So the way the book starts, again, it's really sandboxy. It's very wide open for the DM. You can choose one of 2 starting quests, and those are explained right here. There is Cold-Hearted Killer and Nature Spirits, or you can pick any of the quests in the town. So here we have, for example, in Bryn Shander, the quest Foaming Mugs. Now, they don't all take place in and about town. Some of them do have you going a little bit further into the wilderness around the 10 towns, but nothing like Chapter 2, which is focused on a much wider area of wilderness. So for the most part, I liked these quests, but some of them just don't seem like they would be as good for starting. And personally, I don't feel that either of the 2 starting quests are actually quests I'm going to use as a starting quest. First off, Cold-Hearted Killer. I just don't really want to put my level 1 party up against a challenge rating 3 foe. He's got 75 hit points. He also has cold regeneration, so he's going to regain 5 hit points at the start of each turn. It's almost definitely going to be cold because it's freezing cold everywhere in Icewind Dale. So that's going to be a pretty challenging one. Although, here's the thing. With a lot of the foes that look really challenging, combat is not the only option. In fact, in the case of this one right here, I think it does say that he's pretty willing to surrender, actually. Still, you know how that goes. You might expect him to surrender, and then you can have like 2 character deaths in your first session. And, do you really want that? Then we have the quest Nature Spirits, which has almost no combat, and it's just, to me, it seemed a little bit silly. Like these little Twinga, they're just a little bit silly, to be honest with you. Which maybe that's appropriate for a level 1 party, but I really want to drive home that isolation and fear in Icewind Dale, and I don't know if this quest really does that. So personally, I was actually really attracted to this Bremen one, which has a plesiosaur in the lake that is attacking fishing boats, and that one sounded like a pretty decent starting quest to me. But yeah, there's some really cool stuff in Chapter 1. There are some really great quests. There are some dungeon maps. And if you're looking for this book as inspiration, Chapter 1 has some great inspiration just for towns and quests, things that would actually make really good one-shots or a sort of mini-campaign. And the same is true, really, of Chapter 2 on Icewind Dale. Again, very sandboxy. And by the way, in Chapter 1, you're probably not going to be doing all these quests. It says here that they're going to advance to 3rd level after completing 3 quests in this chapter, and advance to 4th level after completing 5 quests in this chapter. And then once they reach 4th level, they no longer gain levels by completing quests in this chapter. So Chapter 1 takes us all the way up to page 100, where we start Chapter 2, Icewind Dale. And so now, once again, we are opening up into the wider world around 10 towns. And I think there's a map somewhere in here. There it is. And this kind of shows us, here's 10 towns, and then here are the other locations that are in Chapter 2. This chapter, it says, is designed for characters of 4th level or higher. Some of its random encounters or locations are more dangerous than others. The characters might need to run away and regroup or take short or long rests between encounters. So there's not much guidance here really for what level players should be for certain quests, and that's one of the big things I will fault this book for in the first couple chapters. I know a lot of people don't really care about balance and just say, no, my players should be smart enough to survive in this harsh and unrelenting wilderness, things like that, but personally, I'd prefer a little bit more guidance. And they actually do give some guidance for the, where are they? Here we go, the random wilderness encounters. They're going to tell you, if you roll this encounter, what it's going to be like. Is it going to be easy, medium, hard, or deadly? And I thought actually the Dragon of Icespire Peak adventure did this pretty well too, because at the beginning of each quest, they'll give you a little overview. Axholm is balanced for characters of 5th level, though characters of 3rd or 4th level can survive its perils if they are cautious and rest between encounters. Even something like that would have been really appreciated by me as a dungeon master, and if they could, even put them in a list at the beginning of each chapter, just kind of saying the suggested level for each party member. It just seems like they got a little bit lazy on that, or their philosophy changed. And again, I know some DMs aren't going to mind that, but for me, I would have appreciated a little more guidance on that so that I don't have to go digging through each quest individually and trying to look up the stat blocks for each monster and try to figure out how hard is this quest really. So to me, that was super frustrating, and it just seems like something that could have easily been done. All right, so Chapter 1 and 2 are very sandboxy, wide open. The other disadvantage of that is that you might not have a whole lot that's kind of carrying your players through. I did think that some of the motivation to take some of these quests was really weak, especially in Chapter 1. Some of the smaller towns are basically saying, hey, we can't pay you, but like you could have a couple of free bottles of brew at the inn when you're done. So the motivation to take on some of these quests maybe is just going to be out of the goodness of their hearts, if they are good and heroic, or maybe just the whole like, hey, it's a quest. We of course take quests. So I would have appreciated a little more kind of propelling the characters forward rather than just assuming that they're going to take every quest that is presented to them. Then again, there are a wide variety of quests, so if they don't like one, they could easily find another one that is more appealing. So I guess it's got that going for it. All right, Chapter 3, Sunblight, is now where we do actually jump into something that is propelling them forward a little more. This is where it gets a little bit more on the rails, for better or worse, depending on your view of that. And I'm still kind of torn on it personally, but I do find that, once you get to Chapter 3, there's a little more glue holding it together. So Sunblight is the fortress of Xardarok Sunblight and his 2 sons, who are part of the Sunblight Duergar clan. It's a heavily defended fortress, and this is where the players, once they get to 4th level, I think is the suggestion, but, they might be able to make it through if they are very careful at lower level. And they're going to be going through this fortress and trying to root out the Duergar threat that is encroaching on the 10 towns. And of course, many of these starting quests earlier in the book, especially in 10 towns, are related to the Duergar. And the big thing is that depending on when they approach this, they are going to be dealing with the threat of the construct dragon they have made, the Shardalun dragon. And it seems very likely that the dragon is going to destroy some of the 10 towns. It's just a matter of how many. So this chapter kind of describes how that goes. It mainly is kind of, strafing through the air and destroying and trying to recharge its breath weapon, but occasionally it does land, and this kind of shows the path through the 10 towns. And if the players have gone through Xardarok's Sunblight Fortress, then they will find some information about the route it is intending to take. Otherwise, they're going to kind of have to guess. But there is some help in the 10 towns for the players. There's also some interesting things that can happen in the town as the characters are dealing with the dragon. So that's kind of cool too. By this time, the players have met an NPC, and here we get kind of a big info dump that propels the players, hopefully, onto the next part of the adventure, which is Auril's abode. So Auril the Frostmaiden has this little fortress on an island, a floating island of ice and snow. I think it's in the Sea of Moving Ice, if I'm not mistaken. And here you have it, the island of Solstice. And so this is where they could now confront the Frostmaiden. And this is just kind of a cool, creepy location with lots of threats and the potential to face the Frostmaiden herself, although they don't necessarily need to kill her here. And they could pretty well avoid her, actually. But eventually they're going to be looking for a device that will allow them to crack into the glacier, Ragged Glacier, and get down to this forgotten city beneath the ice. And first, they have to go through the Caves of Hunger. Okay, so the Caves of Hunger is a pretty big dungeon crawl. It's pretty horrific, lots of zany and crazy and very frightening things. Many, many different threats here. And then they will get eventually to the city of Ythryn if they get through the Caves of Hunger. And here is the necropolis for the city of Ythryn. Really cool map here. I really like this. And there's a DM version here that has kind of a key for the various locations. So yeah, beautiful artwork here. Really love the colors. So according to the NPC who has led them here, they will now be finding a device that could perhaps end the eternal winter that Icewind Dale finds itself in. It is a place of very high magic and powerful magic, and a lot of that is still very alive and well here, including a demi-lich and just a whole lot of other threats. Not all of which they necessarily have to defeat. Some of them could actually kind of be allies in their quest. Oh, I forgot to mention, Auril the Frostmaiden will, at some point, if she is not already defeated, make an appearance here in Ythryn as well. And at this point, she will kind of confront the players and take a last stand against them. And it does say that, ideally, the characters will be 9th level when they first get here, and by the end, they could be as high as 12th level, although it says on the back here, this is for levels 1 through 11. But it is here in Ythryn that the players will eventually have the chance to find what they need to stop this grasp of winter that is holding Icewind Dale and bring normal life back to it. Beautiful picture of life returning to Icewind Dale here. And then we have the epilogue. All right, including some really interesting options about time travel here, by the way. All right, then in the appendices, we have the Icewind Dale trinkets here I mentioned before. We've got those character secrets. We've got a whole lot of creatures, full list of them here. And yeah, there's some really cool and horrific stuff I really like this Cold Light Walker. A lot of wintry animals once again, as well as some Dwargar variants. Also some living spells that basically act as monsters. Those are encountered in this adventure as well. There are also these tribes that are operating in Icewind Dale, and there's some info on those. Oh, and by the way, a lot of the animals that the players encounter will be awakened. There's basically these like frost druids who have awakened a lot of animals, and now they can speak and reason and talk to the players. So that's kind of weird how frequently that occurs when it's just like, hey, another animal. It probably talks. And yeah, it's just kind of an odd thing, but kind of cool, I guess. There's a lot of stuff in here that's just really quirky. There's a bit here on magic, some magical items and scrolls and such. By the way, I didn't mention it, but the Rime of the Frostmaiden is actually this poem or song that will give the players access to the glacier and what is beneath the ice. So overall, I really like the book. I think there's a lot here. I like the sandboxy nature of it. I just wish there was more guidance in those first couple chapters. But once the adventure gets going, I generally appreciate the tone. The setting itself seems really cool. The storyline seems cool. I will say that I was expecting a bit more horror from this book. This feeling of isolation and cold and the unknown. It's definitely there, but there's also quite a bit of comic relief and just some goofy stuff. Like, for example, this, fish on the wall that actually comes alive and tries to bite players, things like that. Just a lot of kind of typical 5th edition goofy that pulls you out of the horror aspect. So I would say it's a lot more the flavor of like an X-Files or Fargo or Twin Peaks at times, rather than proper horror. Just kind of this creepy, weird stuff going on, sometimes goofy, make you smile, make you laugh. Other times a bit frightening. But again, I think that, of the D&D 5th edition books, this is going to be one of the books that's a lot easier to justify for people who are not wanting to run the whole thing, because of those first 2 chapters, which make up a significant portion of the book. Up to page 169, it's pretty much just a whole bunch of quests, and it's almost a bit more like a setting book, where you're getting lots of inspiration, ideas, setting information, and quests. For those who are looking to run the whole thing like I am, I think you can definitely piece together some good stuff here, but I don't know if I would recommend this book for the beginner DM, because it's going to be some work and there's going to be some tough decision making in terms of how to piece together the campaign until it gets to chapter 3, when you really take off and it gets a little bit more on the rails. So overall, I do recommend the book. I really like it. I think it could have been better. I think there are some areas for improvement here for sure, but I am fairly happy with the end result and I'm looking forward to running it. All right, that's going to do it for the review. Questions, comments, I would love to hear from you down below. And I want to thank the WASD20 patrons for their amazing support of my work. These people give to the channel on a monthly basis, and they also get some pretty cool rewards. Things like weekly live map drawing streams with me. So go check it all out over at patreon.com/WASD20. All right, take care, everybody. You'll see me again very soon.